Translator. Pluto Editor. Tarn. Lukey here. Isn't this the missus who stabbed one of my eyes? Aren't you going to run? My attack range is really wide. I think you will have to run over there if you want to avoid getting stabbed by me. Under Lin Sanjo's horror-filled gaze, the Duolujang did not attack. Instead, it pointed to an empty patch not far from her. His words were interjected with frivolous laughter, and he narrowed his long slit-like eyes in an exceedingly unpleasant manner. When it was human, it should have been a repulsive man. Somehow, this thought flashed through Lin Sanjo's mind: contemporary romance. She stared unwaveringly in the direction of the Duolujang, her palm flashed with a white light, and she held another handful of cards. Despite the fact that her body was slightly trembling from her intense nervousness, she forced herself to stay in the same spot. It was a joke if it thought that she would run out to the open space, allowing herself to get sniped. She was not stupid. With such proximity, she could only strike first. Once again, Lin Sanju threw the cards in her hand toward the Duolujang. However, the Duolujang was prepared this round. It took a step back and swiftly deflected most of the cards with its mouthpart. The single card that it dodged was summoned back to Lin Sanjo's hand. But when she took a glance, she could not help silently swearing. Of all cards, that remaining card was a support card which was used in tandem with the razor blades. It was a open black lens bracket black cloth close black lens bracket used for obstructing the enemy's line of view. She had finished all the razor blades in her arsenal this round. The razor blades that she used were now on the ground. If she wanted to use them again, she had to touch them. Otherwise, she had no other method of retrieving them back. In that 1 month, she consciously kept many items as cards. However, with this incident, she was only left with various items that were useless in this situation. Looking at the card in Lin Sanjo's hand, the Duolujang merely squinched its remaining eye. It walked to the edge of the car roof and started chuckling menacingly. Lin Sanju expected it to say something, but suddenly it swung its mouthpart and thrust it toward her. In that instant, she realized that she was too close to the mouthpart. She simply could not evade it if she did not run outward. Marcy gave a shout of dismay as Lin Sanju rolled outward in desperation. She felt a burning sensation on her shoulder. In the end, she was still scratched by the mouthpart, and a bloody wound appeared on her shoulder. Pressing down on her wounded shoulder, her eyes swept involuntarily to the building opposite them. She only realized then that she had already rolled away from her cover and was now exposed. No, it is too dangerous. With a single thought, the open black lens bracket black cloth close black lens bracket flew up in the air and opened up with a quick whoosh. At almost the same time, sounds of gunshots rang in the air after that brief silence. 2 consecutive shots were fired. Thanks to the distraction brought about by the movement of the black cloth, the sniper lost focus. One of the rays of light created a hole in the ground beside her. Unfortunately, the second shot pierced through Lin Sanjo's knee in an instant. It hurt so much that she let out a cry of pain. It was impossible for her to stand, so she just laid on the same spot gasping for air. You mother F******. Witnessing that scene, Luther could not control himself. He leapt out, holding the police baton in his hand, and yelled out as he swung a violent blow toward the Duolujang. At the same time, Marcy lunged herself toward where Lin Sanju was lying. She planned to pull Lin Sanju to safety. The latter was just lying defenselessly on the ground. With another ray of light, that will certainly be the end for Lin Sanju. However, just when Marcy grabbed her hand, preparing to drag her behind the car, the sniper rifle rang out again. Lin Sanju watched helplessly as a mist of blood erupted from Marcy's chest, and tiny red droplets sprayed across her face. Marcy, she called out in a daze. Through Marcy's lifeless light brown eyes, Lin Sanju could see the reflection of her own pale distraught face. In the next instant, Marcy's dead body, stripped of all support, fell heavily onto Lin Sanju. Her tears gushed out as the dead body landed on her. Even though she had already experienced it once, the death of a companion still brought her unbearable grief. Marcy, Luther, who was not far from them, yelled out furiously like an injured creature. Lin Sanjo's heart dropped for a second. She mustered all her strength and shouted loudly, "Don't come here, hide." But Luther turned a deaf ear to her advice. He waved his police baton pushing back the Duolujang, then turned and rushed over. Within a second, he plopped down kneeling beside the two of them. Luther looked at the dead body, unable to speak for quite a while. He was already exposed, but there was no sound of gunshot, unlike what Lin Sanju expected. Besides, Luther seemed to have forgotten that. He reached them and touched Marcy's hair with his trembling hands. He let out a sob and looked at Lin Sanju with reddened pleading eyes. Let's restart this. We still have one more chance. Marcy is my family. The fresh red numeral flashed in front of her eyes. Suddenly, she felt a chill in her heart. Did they really have one more chance? So far, everything was just a conjecture. What if it wasn't a countdown and everyone just had a precognitive dream? Luther's eyes glistened with tears. Under the night sky, they shimmered with a pleading hope. Looking at his eyes, Lin Sanju practically could not bring herself to express her doubts. Okay. She averted her gaze, forcing the word out of her mouth, but did not receive any response. She lifted her eyes only to see that Luther's face was now rigid and had turned an unprecedented ashen white. Lin Sanju felt instantly crushed, like a crumbling ice tower. She stared fixedly at Luther's face, calling his name urgently. Luther, Luther. Say something. Talk to me. Emptiness shrouded Luther's eyes as blood seeped out of his mouth. His limp body flopped over Marcy, revealing a blood-covered mouthpart piecing his fair white neck. Wow, even when they die, they have to die together. I am so moved by such friendship. But are you all scared out of your wits? Restart this. Don't tell me you believe that you can resurrect the dead. The Duolujong's long, sinister eye gleamed with satisfaction. Mrs., don't cry. Every bit of moisture from your body is extremely precious to me. Only then did Lin Sanju realize that she was crying wordlessly. Comparing the gravity of having witnessed her friends die one by one in front of her, that so-called chance was ever so elusive. She could no longer feel the pain from her wound. The Duolujong took its own sweet time pulling out its mouthpart and approaching her. Lin Sanju strained her eyes, staring at the building across the road. There were 4 or 5 metallic spots of light behind the window of an unknown level. The view behind the window was largely covered by a curtain, so she could only make out a vague figure of a person whom gender she could not tell. Before I die, I must find out at least which story the gunshots were fired from. Lin Sanju thought to herself. 1, 2, 3, 7, 8. I bet you didn't expect that there was another person there, right? How is it? My woman's ability is not bad, huh? Following her gaze, the Duolujong turned back to Lin Sanju and said almost boastfully. His tone dripped with conceit. Lin Sanju could not hear anything else clearly. Her mind was only occupied with the counting in her head. When she counted to 12, through her eyes clouded by her unstoppable tears, she saw the mouthpart covered in Luther's fresh blood. It rose in front of her. Her world suddenly became dark and blurry. Her consciousness dissipated into nothingness just like mere vapors. Ellipsis. Has he left? An unfamiliar male voice suddenly came from somewhere. Yeah, in the end, I could not resist using that thing, another man replied. This turned out as expected. From what I see, these people have quite the potential. Who would have known that they would meet opponents much stronger than them at the get-go? They're unlucky. If I don't use it now, I might not be able to use it the next time. *T, that's mine. We have to catch him, the man gritted his teeth and said. Hey, look, this is a rare growth type. Tut, that's true. So, do you want to help them? The indistinct voices of the 2 strangers drifted away. Lin Sanju had totally slipped into an unconscious darkness. It was the death that she had already experienced once. Second round. Another complete wipeout. Translator. Pluto editor. Tarn. What the hell happened? As the female voice cursed angrily, she gave a violent kick to the door of the bus with her boots on. The exit door of the bus immediately rattled in its frame. The bright red numerical 1 above it still hung steadily above it. Behind Lin Sanju was Marcy, who sighed with a lowered head, and Luther, who had just calmed down from his fury. Contemporary romance. Does this mean that we only have one chance left? Lin Sanju took a deep breath. Her bloodshot eyes glowered, and her unfathomable fury grew. Who are the people responsible for all that FC carry behind our backs? Xiao Ju, don't be so mad. If we looked at it from another perspective, perhaps we were saved by that countdown. Otherwise, we would have all been dead. Marcy consoled her softly, but was still at a loss as to what they would do next. Even though it might be true, momentarily, Lin Sanju found it difficult to accept. She could not help feeling that someone was toying with them. She tried her best to curb her anger as both her hands clenched the sides of her pants tightly. After some time, she suddenly stood up. I am going out for a walk. Luther massaged his temples as if he had a headache. His expression was not any better. She walked a few steps away from the bus while the night wind spat waves of sand at her. The slight pain made Lin Sanju deeply aware that she was still alive. Silence surrounded her, without a single hint of noise. It was so quiet that she could even hear the blood flowing through the vessels in her ears. This was perhaps the reason why her intense emotions gradually waned. It's so quiet, but, isn't it a little too quiet? She kept feeling like something was amiss. Lin Sanju knitted her brows as her gaze drifted to the dirty citro. A short distance away from her. That's right, during the previous 2 times, Voli would have already gone over to wake us up by this time. But why didn't we hear his mobile phone alarm? Could it be that he hasn't woken up? Just as that thought occurred to her, Lin Sanju strode quickly to the citro. And began calling out a little worriedly, "Voli, are you awake?" After she waited for a while, she still heard no activity from the car. She could not wait any longer. She wiped the car's dirt-covered windshield with her sleeve, then bent over and peeked inside. Ads by PubFuture. The front passenger seat was reclined backward and used as a bed. There were packets of half-eaten food, empty water bottles, and some dirty clothes. The only thing missing was Voli himself. Lin Sanju felt herself getting anxious. She surveyed the area as she circled the group of parked vehicles. There was only a vast emptiness around them. The trees had long turned to ashes, so she had an unobstructed view which stretched as far as she could see. Unfortunately, even after she had walked 2 rounds around the area, she could not even spot a single footprint of Voli. Coincidentally, Luther and Marcy were getting off the bus while chatting. When Lin Sanju heard them, she quickly ran over to them yelling, "Voli is not in his car, he's missing. Should we go look for him?" They were stunned. They never expected that Voli would go missing. Marcy opened her mouth and was just about to speak when they heard a lethargic voice coming from the roof of the bus. "I'd say, you shouldn't look for him. You probably won't find him anyway." The 3 of them were shocked by the voice as they instinctively took a couple of steps back and looked up at the roof. Against the large silver-white moon that hung in the night sky, they could see 2 dark figures. One of them was standing, and the other was sitting down. They did not even realize when these men arrived. The torrid night wind swept past the 2 figures. It was difficult to make out their faces as their shadows melted into the moonlight. From what it seemed, the person who spoke previously was the one sitting down. He appeared to be rather relaxed as one of his legs dangled from the roof. "Why are all of you looking at me like that? So you also think that I'm good looking?" he quipped. The 3 of them were dumbfounded for a moment. Lin Sanju opened her mouth and asked, "What did you do to Vo?" Just then, the man who was standing made a quiet scoffing sound interrupting her. Suddenly he stepped forward into the moonlight and leapt upward. The dark figure landed impactfully on the ground, stirring up a cloud of dust. The man had a tall and sturdy stature. His muscular body was like that of a wild beast, exuding a dangerous aura of pent-up energy. He carried a long, slightly curved sword on his back, which appeared to resemble a katana. But he lacked a scabbard, which made it a mystery how he actually attached the sword to his back. The metal-forged blade of his sword glimmered faintly in the dark. For posthumans, jumping down from the roof of a bus wasn't something complicated, but somehow, something about that man raised Lin Sanju and the others' alarm, and they slipped into defensive postures. The man lifted his head, and he lifted a corner of his mouth slowly, revealing to the 3 of them a smile which one would call malicious. In an instant, an imposing pressure like they had never experienced before swept toward them like a wave of a tsunami. As if the person had drawn out all the air from the atmosphere, the 3 of them even stopped breathing for a second. It became difficult for them to even stand as they were assaulted by that pressure. Marcy tried to hold her position, but she was the first one to be unable to withstand it and fell on the ground with a plop as her face turned white. With a face brimming with defiance, his forehead was covered in cold sweat as he was forced into a half-kneel position. Lin Sanju felt as though the man in front of her was squeezing her heart in his hand. Every strained muscle in her body throbbed to keep her propped up. She trembled as she tried her best to resist the urge to turn and run away. She felt practically like a hare that had encountered a cougar in the prairies. It was a sort of despair that arose from her powerlessness. They were definitely on different levels on the food chain. By this point, Lin Sanjo's keen senses was fully triggered, and all the cells in her body were screaming to her, "Run! Run! Run!" Just when she was about to give in to her impulse to turn and run away, the man, who was still sitting while he spoke, leapt off the roof, landing lightly. A breeze, like a wind in spring which appears from nowhere, sending away the frost of winter and bringing to bloom a million pear blossoms, lightly washed over Lin Sanjo's face. The seemingly murderous intent which hung heavily in the air immediately abated. Once he landed, he chided, "Why did you scare them?" Thereafter, he turned to look at the three of them consoling, "Everything's fine. It is just a bad habit of his. You don't have to be afraid." The man with the katana on his back harumphed. He countered coldly, "That's 'cause they're weak as sh*t. Who are you guys?" Lin Sanju asked as her heartbeat gradually stabilized. The more she heard their voice, the more familiar they sounded. "Why did you look for us?" Luther went over to help Marcy back up on her feet. Hearing Lin Sanju question, he quickly added, "And what did you mean when you say that we shouldn't look for Voli?" Even though he was young, he was very insightful. Once that man with a gentle voice jumped down, he immediately noticed that the two men had no intention of harming them. Ads by PubFuture. Judging from the situation, if that man with the fierce gaze wanted to kill them, he might only need less than 30 seconds. The man who was sitting down moments before was actually as good-looking as he claimed. He had white dazzling teeth, and his smile reminded them of a peach blossom petal. Seeing the slightly pitiable state that the three of them were in, he suddenly exclaimed, smiling, "I guess you have no idea what situation you are in." The three to them did not reply. The man with the katana suddenly chipped, "Not only weak but stupid." Lin Sanju reacted with a frown, but with the shreds of fear that still persisted, she finally bit her lips and kept quiet. "They are new to this after all, Mr. Peach Blossom mediated. Facing the few of them, he said, all right. I will tell you everything from the start. From the looks of it, all of you haven't really experienced much of the new worlds." Luther looked at Marcy, then he replied hesitantly, "We have gone through 2 new worlds, and this is the first time for Xiaoju." When he heard this, Mr. Peach Blossom was taken aback. He gazed at them with widened eyes, too. "You experienced 2 E-level worlds consecutively. What's an E-level world?" Luther asked, perplexed. A troubled expression appeared on Mr. Peach Blossom's face. "Really? I didn't expect that we will meet total newbies. Listen, all the parallel universes inflicted with the New World phenomenon are classified into 5 levels, from E to A, based on survival difficulty. I think you all must have played video games before. Right, it's like a game. If you ask me how they are classified, I can only say that people from somewhere do that. You wouldn't know even if I told you. Anyway, for everyone to better adapt to the new worlds, they are segregated into 5 levels, and E-level is the most leisurely." When she heard the word, leisurely, Marcy's expression instantly changed, but eventually, she still remained silent. On the other hand, Luther was quick to retort. His fair face was flushed, but he suppressed his anger saying, "Most leisurely. Do you know how many people died in that war-ridden world? When all the soldiers of suitable conscription age died, the ones fighting on the battlefield were just children who were just a bag of bones. You call that leisurely? As a normal person, being able to survive that long after an apocalyptic event, it really is a relaxing world." Mr. Peach Blossom smiled coldly as if to aggravate him further. "You must know, it is almost worthless to be a post-human living in any worlds above E-level because they are that unpredictable. You might survive today, but you might not survive tomorrow, just like you guys." Quote, "What level is hyperthermal hell?" Lin Sanju couldn't help asking. Mr. Peach Blossom eyed her for a moment, and replied with a smile, D-level. Lin Sanju turned pale. If this place which had already killed us twice is only D-level, how are the worlds that are C-level and above? When she thought of this, she asked with a slight tremble in her voice, "How do you determine these levels?" "About that, it is related to the current situation you're all in." Mr. Peach Blossom reverted back to his easygoing smile. "In all new worlds that are E-level and above, there is a random chance that, how should I put it, an area-based trap will appear. We call these pocket dimensions." "Pocket dimensions?" The three of them parroted after him. "It is just a term, it doesn't really matter. Just that this is the most commonly used term. A pocket dimension presents all sorts of life-threatening challenges, just like in video games, and you can only exit a dungeon after you have successfully cleared that stage. For this particular pocket dimension, the counter will fall every time you die. When you've used up all 3 chances, you will really die then. So, we really only have 1 chance left," Lin Sanju said in a daze. "That's right." Unexpectedly, it was the man with the katana that replied. Your performance in the last 2 rounds was so pathetic that it makes me want to cry. Lin Sanju accepted the humiliation silently, swallowing her words. It was true, they suffered a total defeat twice, that was a little. Noticing that their morale fell to the bottom with a single sentence from his companion, Mr. Peach Blossom grimaced, it's not really your fault. Your opponents are way more experienced. Let me introduce myself, I am Li Jejun, he's Heizeji. This round, we'll help you. Translator notes. Peach blossoms are related to one's love fortune in Chinese astrology and sometimes used to describe people who are attractive to the opposite sex. Translator. Pluto editor, Tern. The names of these 2 people are, weird enough, Lin Sanju roasted them silently in her heart. Are you Japanese? Luther asked Heizeji inquisitively, seeming to have forgotten that just moments before they were being threatened by that man. What? The latter replied in an irritated manner, frowning and showing Luther a, what the hell are you talking about? Look, well, Japanese are, how should I put it, that is. Maybe in their world, they adopt a different convention in naming their children. We can't try to comprehend using our past experience and logic. Noticing that Heizeji's face was become darker by the second, Lin Sanju deeply feared that Heizeji would just grab his katana and sliced open Luther if that young man asked any more questions. She quickly changed the subject, I just want to ask, what happened to our companion, Bully? Just as she finished her question, an intense overbearing murderous intent erupted from Heizeji's body. Unprepared, the pressure forced the 3 of them onto the ground again. Li Jejun hastily helped the 2 ladies up. He turned to his companion and complained, can you please control your ability? Heizeji looked displeased, but the overwhelming pressure and the display of strength finally dissipated. Luther, who did not receive any help because he was a male, stood up by himself and silently dusted the dirt off his body. Li Jejun gestured for everyone to board the bus to continue their conversation. He found a seat and sat down lazily. He casually scanned the bus and helped himself to a packet of chocolate cookies. While he started eating, he finally spoke, your friend called Tian Minbo escaped from us. That caught Lin Sanju's attention. Honestly speaking, to us entering this D-level world was something we didn't expect. Arriving in this low-level new world, we actually planned to treat it as a vacation. Li Jejun beamed as he pointed to his companion, but, some time back, this guy somehow developed a sudden compassion. He insisted on saving a man from another pocket dimension. And, that man was your Voli. When he saw the disbelief on everyone's faces, Heizeji's face turned even darker. Tian Minbo claimed that he admired us and wanted to be our lackey, swearing that he will follow us to his death. It was impossible to get rid of him. He really seemed rather eager, so I let him follow us for a period of time. Li Jejun sighed, vexation filled his limpid eyes, who would have thought? After he had grown closer to us, he stole an important item from Zeji when we let our guard down for a moment and escaped in the night. Hearing this, the 3 of them were stunned. From their display of power, Li Jejun and his companion had no reason to lie. That would only mean, ads by PubFuture. Lin Sanju thought about it for a moment and looked at Luther and Marcy, holding back her anger. He said that he was looking for companions. So from the start, he already planned to use us as his human shields. Before the 2 of them could reply, Li Jejun responded with his laid-back voice, I reckon that was his scheme. He had witnessed how I chased down others, so he probably knew that he couldn't go far by himself. So he thought that I wouldn't be able to catch him just because he joined a team. How he underestimated us, ha. I can find him even if he enters a pocket dimension. Marcy ran her fingers through her red hair and asked doubtfully, so where is he now? Why isn't he together with us? Li Jejun did not say a word. Instead, he glanced over at his companion. It is because of that item he stole. Heizeji suddenly spoke, his gaze was cold and vicious. That is a special item which I spent a great deal of effort finding. It allows its user to forcefully break out from a pocket dimension. When he said that, the 3 of them immediately looked at him wide-eyed. There wasn't a need to explain how precious that item was, especially as Lin Sanju and the others only had one last chance at survival. If one could forcefully break out of a pocket dimension, doesn't that mean that they could gain an additional life? The 3 of them had almost changed their opinion about Heizeji when they heard that he saved Voli once. However, the next moment, they witnessed a cold, calculating smile appearing at the side of his mouth. Once I get my item back, I am going to personally stuff him into an A-level pocket dimension. His calm tone was just like a predator making an opportune move as it hid in the jungle and oozed with danger. Lin Sanju shuddered for a second, involuntarily. There's a limit to the item, it can only be used 15 times. Otherwise, he would have abandoned all of you much earlier during the second round. It is not that easy to find human shields around. Li Jejun narrowed his eyes and sighed. With those words, Luther, being the upright young man he was, jumped up furiously. His face turned red with anger. When we find that son of AB*TCH, I am going to give him the thrashing of his life. Brother Jun, if there is any way we can help, just let us know. Seeing Li Jejun's cheerful expression, Lin Sanju rolled her eyes in her heart. She coughed and said softly, Luther, sit down. Our top priority is to survive and escape this pocket dimension. Right, since we are talking about this, entry into a pocket dimension is only possible at the point of commencement, so myself and Aji are actually a legal entrance. We can't actually help you in battle. Li Jejun's fox-like eyes narrowed with his smile, so we will provide you intel and play a supporting role. You can come up with your strategy. After we exit this pocket dimension, we still need a favor from all of you. Lin Sanju eyed him for a moment and felt a little indecisive. There is no such thing as a free lunch. This Li Jejun might be smiling, but he doesn't seem like he'll be an easy person to deal with. Who knows what he will ask from us as repayment for their kindness. But putting things in perspective, the three of them were in no position to negotiate. As she thought of this point, she gritted her teeth and gave a light nod to Luther and Marcy. Let's do this. Once the decision was made, the few of them started discussing their strategy. The information that Li Jejun and He Zeji provided was so detailed that it was as though they knew the opponents personally. According to the duo, they managed to gather all the relevant intel about the opponents just after circling that area for a few rounds. Sure enough, just as what they had inferred during the second round, they were ambushed by a two-man team. The first member was a duolujang who always patrolled around a few blocks of buildings, and the other member was a human who was hiding on the 15th floor. Other than the fact that the duolujang was well-nourished, and retained its normal build, they basically did not need to fear it. The one who was truly dangerous was actually that woman. Currently, the woman had already developed two skills, sniping and setting traps. Lin Sanjo's party had already experienced the power of her sniping skills, and it was different from how military snipers worked. The metallic ray from that woman used was like a bullet, however, she neither faced any issues with accuracy associated with gun precision nor required a long time to take aim. All she had to do was to lock onto the target with her eyes and pull the trigger. No matter how good Lin Sanju's physical capabilities were, she hadn't reached the stage where she could be faster than a bullet. Furthermore, the greatest weakness of a sniper, close combat, was solved perfectly by her ability to lay traps. I actually wanted to head upstairs to take a look, but once I stepped into the building, I was shocked. From the first story all the way to the 15th story, the entire floors were covered with her traps. Even though it wasn't difficult to destroy those traps, but our illegal status will definitely be discovered, Li Jejun continued, you must know, we can't engage in a battle, because we will only be on the receiving end of the attacks. What sort of traps are these? Lin Sanju asked, feeling slightly anxious. I have no idea, Li Jejun shrugged, didn't I tell you, I didn't try to set them off. Contemporary romance. Lin Sanju gave him a look of frustration, so you are saying, we shouldn't head upstairs, right? Li Jejun nodded calmly. How are we going to fight if we can't go upstairs? Lin Sanju could not help feeling disheartened. There's one more information you should all know. Beaming, Li Jejun passed Lin Sanju and Marcy each a bottle of water. In this pocket dimension, only your group retains memories of the previous rounds. The three of them instantly lifted their heads to listen. Even though yourselves and they entered the same pocket dimension, but them being on the attack team, do not have any consciousness that they are in a pocket dimension. They were just doing what they planned to do on the same day when they first entered the pocket dimension, and that is to hunt. Li Jejun looked more and more excited as he said this, that is to say, if you attack today, you will still catch them off guard. If you strategize this right, your counterattacks should definitely work. Perhaps it was the unruffled manner in which Li Jejun had explained that, but the faint fear that surrounded their hearts seemed to have lessened. Li Jejun went through with them once again all the various points that they should pay attention to. After that, deciding that it should be sufficient, he called to the sleepy He Zeji that it was time for them to alight. It is up to us now. Looking as the two of them walked into the distance, Lin Sanju looked at Luther and Marcy with her bright eyes, and said in a determined voice, "We will definitely survive." Translator note: the Chinese characters and thus the original pronunciation of names Li Jejun and He Zeji are rather unique sounding names, but the romanization does not reflect this. Translator: Pluto editor, Tern. Luther spent almost an hour walking the distance covered over their 20 minutes drive the last 2 rounds. According to Li Jejun's intel, the duoluzhong would usually pace around the building that it stayed in, looking for people who had wandered away from their groups. However, Luther had already walked a few rounds around the area about 500 meters away from that particular building. Yet, he did not even catch a glimpse of any duoluzhong. So it seems like that chap is quite prudent, it is not willing to stray far from the building. Luther heard Lin Sanjo's pensive voice over the walkie-talkie. In that case, you can go a little closer. Just remember, you must hide yourself if you spot it, then you know what you'll have to do, right? Luther replied, don't worry, I have the relevant experience. Okay, let's keep in contact. He switched off and kept the walkie-talkie, then he slowly approached the building where their opponents were located in. He activated his eagle eye ability to its maximum capability so that he would immediately discover anything amiss in the area. Luther exhaled slowly as his heart raced. The highlight of their battle today was all on him, so he was feeling the mounting pressure. As he cautiously headed for the building, Luther did not forget even for a second to seek cover each step of the way. If he was spotted by that woman and sniped down even before he found the duoluzhong, it would be such a waste. Thankfully, Luther had learned quite a few stealth techniques during his year in that war-ridden world, so he did this quite skillfully. The building which harbored the sniper stood out from the rest of the surrounding apartments. Many buildings within the area were still intact. There were quite a few 6, 7-story residential apartments, and the street which was usually bustling with small shops and business was now dead. Even the dead bodies had already turned to dust. The silhouette of a man with a long hanging shadow from his face suddenly swung round the corner without any warning. It dragged its feet sluggishly. Luther's heart missed a beat, as he immediately shrunk backward, hiding behind a sand-covered signboard. Estimating that the duoluzhong should not be able to hear him from his position, Luther switched on his walkie-talkie. "I spotted it," he said as quietly as possible. "Xiao Ju, are you sure that it called that sniper, his woman, previously?" "Yes, I am 100% sure of it." Ads by PubFuture. "Okay, then I'll start." Once he had said that, Luther locked onto the duoluzhong which looked rather carefree. "Girlfriend," he said silently in his mind. Almost instantaneously, Luther observed that locks of luscious black hair fell over his shoulders like a waterfall. No matter how many times he had transformed, each new form was a refreshing experience for him. He reached out to touch his smooth hair and his small, exquisite face. He realized that his hands were now fair and dainty, and he was even wearing an expensive-looking bracelet on his hand. "I succeeded. Hey, I think this guy's girlfriend is Little Ms. Perfect, fair-skinned, rich, and beautiful." Luther chuckled over the walkie-talkie. "She's not bad. She has big boobs, a thin waist, and long hair." The 2 women on the other side of his walkie-talkie scoffed. From the background, he could hear Marcy mumbling about puberty or something. Lin Sanju's voice was clear, but she sounded rather exasperated. "Can't you be a little more serious? All right, get out there. Hey, Li Jejun, what are you doing?" A cackling noise followed her shocked voice as if the walkie-talkie had been snatched from her. The next moment, he could hear Li Jejun shouting sternly over the walkie-talkie, "Don't go out." Luther froze as he had just taken a step in his red mid-heels. "I have seen that sniper. She is not beautiful, she is an average-looking woman with cropped hair." Li Jejun continued anxiously, "You changed into the wrong person. Hey, can you hear me?" No matter how he yelled, he did not receive a response, because Luther had already silently switched off the walkie-talkie. Li Jejun's warning was still a step late. Just when Luther stepped out from his cover, of all times, it just had to be when the duoluzhong turned to look over. Within the time that Li Jejun took to say those words, the duoluzhong had already rushed over happily. From its speed, it will only take about 10 seconds for the 2 of them to meet face to face. Luther contained his nervousness and remained in his position as he quickly kept the walkie-talkie. Following which, he crossed his arms and held his shoulders, crying out, "Ah!" Using the woman's voice, acting like he was afraid. Just as he expected, the duoluzhong suddenly stopped in its track just as it was about to reach Luther. Even that long horrendous mouthpart could not hide its surprise. May. Luther looked up with a face full of fear. He revealed his beautiful, endearing feminine face. His white face was covered with streaks of tears. The next words from the Duolujang immediately confirmed that Lin Sanjo's information was not wrong, it was just a goddamn accidental mishap. May, why are you here? Where is your boyfriend? OFCK. At this point, this was the only thing Luther wanted to say. Lin Sanju did not know the largest shortcoming of his ability. Luther had to state the relationship between his form and the target to activate his ability. In reality, he could only transform into the person that fits the criterion of that relationship based on how his target really feels. Apparently, the Duolujang did not acknowledge in his heart that the sniper was his girlfriend. Instead, this woman called May, who already had a boyfriend, was who it recognized as his true girlfriend. That's why I hate these sort of people with complicated romantic relationships. Luther grumbled inwardly. Despite that, he retained his fearful and pitiful-looking expression. I lost contact with him, but how did you become like this? The Duolujang looked up and down, trying to size up the woman in front of him. Thereafter, it immediately smiled and said, I evolved and gained a body alteration ability. I don't look great right now, but I am quite powerful. To maximize the effectiveness of his shapeshifting, Luther had spent a significant amount of effort polishing his acting skills. Despite knowing that the Duolujang was full of nonsense, he still managed to nod his head, as if he was a little frightened, and diverted his gaze away from the mouthpart. This world now is so scary, he sobbed spasmodically. What about your dad? He's so rich, he must have a backup plan, the Duolujang asked casually. And, have you evolved? What abilities did you gain? It asked excitably. Contemporary romance. So that's how it is. Luther sneered in his heart. We have an underground bunker stocked with food and water. I hid there all this time. If you need to, you can come over. Luther observed its expression secretly as he said this. Seeing that the Duolujang did not show any reaction to the words, food and water, he continued, as for my abilities. I think I only have a heat resistance ability and nothing else. Now, the Duolujang's expression started to change. At the start, a flash of disappointment seemed like it was trying to smile. The muscles under the Duolujang eyes wrinkled together as it narrowed its eyes. So you don't have other abilities? So why did you come out here? Before Luther could think of an answer, it continued speaking. Let me see, why don't you follow me back? I will protect you. How's that? As it said this, that uncomfortable half-smile on its face became more visible. Do you plan to consume me after we go back? Or slowly rear me like a livestock? Luther mocked in his mind, yet he had an I'm saved expression on his face. That's great, I will just follow you, as he wept gratefully. The Duolujang primped himself and actually gestured for Luther to walk first. Luther smiled at it shyly like a girl and walked ahead. The Duolujang followed behind. Deep in the night, their unhurried footsteps filled the empty streets. May, do you still remember when we first met? The Duolujang asked from behind him. Luther felt his heart skip a beat. His shapeshifting skills did not provide him any sort of information, so he just muttered a sound of affirmation. When I first saw you, I knew you were the right person for me. That well-nourished Duolujang which had no worries about food actually had the mood to recall its good memories. Do you remember? We were so happy together. Why, yes, because you liked the beach, we went to Boracay, the Maldives, Tahiti, all those places. When I think about that, the time spent with you was just like a dream. As it continued talking, something else crept into its voice, if only your dad didn't intervene. Ha, I admit that you had spent a lot during the time when we were together. But, I was truly in love with you. Luther was actually clueless about what to say next. After he had thought about it for a moment, he started sobbing fakely. I understand. You understand? If you understood my feelings, why did you end up with that second-generation heir? You are just like your father. You think that I am not good enough for you, right? The Duolujang suddenly raised its voice, genuinely scaring Luther a little. Unexpectedly, he suddenly smiled again. May, you don't know how the world has changed, I am so happy. Luther felt a slight breeze behind his back. He could hear a faint sound of moving air heading toward him. He was long prepared for this, as he focused his full attention behind him. He bent forward as he heard the sound of moving wind. When he bent down and dodged to the side, he saw a long black shadow sweep above his head. The Duolujang, which didn't expect to miss, stared at Luther in shock. Luther smiled coldly as he kicked off the mid-heels on his feet and adopted a fighting stance. Luther stepped onto the hot tar road with Maya's delicate bare feet. It was so hot that it hurt slightly, but it somehow cleared his mind. You managed to dodge that? I think you lived off too many women, so you aren't as nimble as you think. Luther laughed. Before he even finished his sentence, the mouthpart lurched forward at him again.